Hello there, I'm the Biblical Translator, so called not because I translate the Bible in different languages, but basically because I translate the Bible and paraphrase it and make it easier for us to understand today from my point of view. I'm not saying that what I say is fact or what my interpretation is fact. I mean, the Bible has been translated over the years and interpreted by so many people. Everybody has their own spin on it. So this is really about my spin. And today's scripture is taken from Mark 8:31, and it says, "The Son of Man must suffer many terrible things and be rejected by elders, the leading priests and teachers of religious law. He would be killed, but in 3 days he would rise from the dead." And Peter, like so many of us who do not want to hear horrible things happening, and we try to say to people who tell us bad things, or things that we, not necessarily bad things, but things that we don't want to know about or don't want to acknowledge, and we go into a sense of denial. It's like when somebody says, "Look, I'm dying of a terminal disease," and you're like, "No, you're not, you're going to get well," and you mean well, but you're kind of negating the truth for that person. What you're saying indirectly is that you're lying. This is not true. I don't want it to be true, so therefore it's not true. And Peter reprimanded Jesus for saying he was going to die in 3 days' time, and then he was going to be resurrected. And Jesus said, "Get away from me, Satan," because Peter didn't realize he was actually calling Jesus a liar. Jesus was prophesying, and he was saying, "Look, I don't believe it. This is not true." Peter wasn't coming from a bad place. Peter was coming from that human place that we don't want to hear things about death and dying. And even though Jesus said he was going to come back to life after 3 days, all Peter heard was that he was going to die in 3 days, or he was going to die imminently. And I'm sure, your loved ones or anyone you care for, if they were to tell you that they were going to die, you wouldn't want to hear it. It's a form of prophesying, isn't it? It's almost like you're telling people you have a superpower. If I have a terminal illness and I say to you I'm going to die and they've given me 3 months to live, my loved ones will probably say, "What do they know? What do doctors know?" I've known people who have lived much longer. The doctors have said they're going to live for 2 days and they've lived for years. And they do not want to acknowledge it. And then when it does finally happen, it's much more difficult. And instead of them enjoying that time with their loved one, they're filled with doubt and worry and all sorts of things that dampen their spirit. What Jesus wanted when he was telling them that was just support. "Look, I am going to die in 3 days, and this is a bad time for me because I'm going to be persecuted. They're going to hurt me. They're going to physically torment me. I need your support." He didn't want for for Peter to say, "Look, don't worry about it, Jesus. This is not going to happen. You're Jesus. You can take care of that." More or less, this is just implying, you can take care of that. Sorry, the stand rocked. But you can take care of it. So I kind of I kind of think to myself, that is so similar to how the majority of us are when people tell us the truth. We scoff at prophecies. We scoff at what's in the Bible, what they predict in goodness knows when, We make a mockery of it. So many of us make a mockery of it and say, how can anybody prophesy? This one's been prophesying and it hasn't happened. It's just as simple things, even like the weather. When the weather people talk about, "Oh, it's going to snow in 3 days' time," and then it doesn't snow, and people say, "What do they know?" Doctors who predict that you're going to die in 3 days' time or 3 months' time, it's like, what do they know? And similarly, when Peter said, reprimand to Jesus for what he considered was being negative, he was more or less saying to Jesus, "What do you know?" Now that is an insult to Jesus. You can't tell Jesus, "What do you know?" That's not going to happen after you know his power You know he can create miracles. You know he can see the future. You know that. So why would you say, you know, more or less tell him that that's not what's going to happen, and telling him off? Was he telling him off because he was making Peter himself feel uncomfortable? A lot of times, because we don't want to feel uncomfortable, we don't want to know the truth. And we chastise those people who try to tell us the truth. And instead of learning from it and embracing it and, you know, seeing it as constructive, we tend to deny it, and we tend to get angry, and we tend to get frustrated, because now they've taken away our peace. They've taken away our joy by telling us something we don't want to hear. And that happens every single day, doesn't it? Well, maybe not every day, but it happens a lot, where we hear things we do not want to hear, and we chastise those people who have made us feel uncomfortable. The truth is always uncomfortable in most cases, especially when it's there to teach you something, when it's there to open up your mind, when it's there to make you a better person, to make you a stronger person, to make you into somebody who's more reliable and more responsible. The truth hurts, and we don't want to hear it a lot of the time. But we need to hear it, we need to acknowledge it, we need to know that life isn't smooth sailing. And when Jesus said, look, I'm going to die and come back in 3 days' time, that should have been a period of rejoicing. That should have been a period where you say, look, Peter should have said, look, guys, to the disciples, Jesus is going to die in 3 days' time. Let us give him the support he needs. He is going to be resurrected in 3 days' time, but for now, he needs us. But what do they do? Peter reprimands him. The others fall asleep. When he needs them and he needs that support, there's nobody there. Jesus died lonely. Despite helping all of those people, he died lonely, alone. Because, I mean, he did prophesy that too. He said, you know, one of you's going to deny me before the clock crows 3. And it happened. You know, after all he had done. And you find that today, don't you? You can be in a relationship and you do everything for an individual, and they just throw it back in your face, or they're not there when you need them. So many of us, we go out of our way and we're helpful and we're kind and we do miracles for people. They might not know that they're miracles, but without your intervention, without your presence in their lives wouldn't be the way they are. You've improved their life in some way. But they've taken it for granted, and they either abuse you or they ignore you or whatever it is they do. Today they call it they blank you. Whatever it is they do, that is the harsh reality of being kind to people. You don't always get it back. So a lot of us, we end up alone even though we're kind to people. And this is an epitome of what happened to Jesus. Despite doing everything for others and being self-sacrificial, he ended up alone. People still didn't believe he was the Son of God. People, despite showing them miracles, they still didn't believe it. So I think I've covered everything here, which is what Jesus interpreted Peter's optimism or failure to accept his death as Peter calling him a liar. You're seeing things merely from a human point of view. This is what Jesus said to Peter. You're seeing things from a human point of view, but that's ironic because Peter was a human. Peter wasn't mortal. Jesus was immortal. So Peter is bound to see things from a human point of view, but at the same time, just because you're human, it doesn't mean you can't have empathy. It doesn't mean you can't have consideration and you can't think about other people. Put yourself in someone else's place. If they know that they're going to die, or they know something bad is going to happen to them in their eyes, just support them. Treat them with kindness and just be there for them. And I think that's all I'm going to say on that one. I'm the Biblical